What's happening, everyone? Welcome to Al Chile. I got my co-hosts with me. I got Sean Gringo Hicks, Nopal Boxeanos, and Run PMC up in the house, man. And we got a lot to talk about, man. A lot of stuff that's been going on, and a great weekend of boxing to look forward to, man. And one hell of a rescore, dude. So let's get right into it, dude. Let's start with the weekend recap. I want to start with Jaime Munguia versus Gabriel Rosado. Munguia he gives us a pretty impressive win in my opinion. He won pretty clearly. I want to know what you guys think. What do you guys think of that fight?
Loved it, man. Loved it.
Yeah, man, it was definitely entertaining. I went in there, like any fight, hoping for a fight to, really be excited about, who's going to show up, what's going to happen, the whole intrigue. And you've heard all the different scenarios and the people's so-called experts giving their perspective on a fight, but nothing like fight night. And, they had great electricity in the crowd. It definitely didn't disappoint. And, yeah, man, I came away thoroughly entertained and a greater appreciation of both fighters, So for me, from a fight fan perspective, no complaint here. I was happy.
Yeah, I was also impressed with both fighters, the heart, but I was more impressed with Munguia's improvement. I mean, he looked way better than I ever seen him box, in my opinion. Just how he punch selection, how he was changing it up. Obviously, there's still some flaws, but looks like Eric Morales is doing him some good because he looks better than I think when even the early fights he had with Eric Morales as his trainer. Like the straight punches he was landing on. Obviously, Rosado, I think, in my opinion, I think he looked a little weight drained because coming from 168 down to 160, and he is older. And what they revealed on the telecast is that he sparred over 100 rounds, and 80 of those rounds were with David Benavidez in camp. Like that's pretty extreme for I feel like for any boxer at any time, but especially Rosado with how little tread he has left on the tires. So because you see how Benavidez fights, and I can only imagine how sparring is with him. So I mean, but that's not to take away from Munguia's performance, though. Like I think even if Rosado had his best night, I think he would have had a lot of trouble with how Munguia was fighting.
Yeah. Just another thing I want to add real quick. I know that they like having the HCP Hispanic Cause and Panic of the Week. I think honorary mention needs to go out to Eric Morales, man, because I definitely agree with Run PMC on that one, man. I saw the improvements because I got to be honest, I'm a Munguia naysayer from the standpoint of it's hard for me to get behind a fighter seriously from a world championship level that gets hit that often that much. I mean, he's still getting hit a lot. I mean, he showed his chin without question, but he was able to show enough adjustments that he made. He wasn't getting caught by everything. He was, you could see that Rosado was trying to set traps, but Rosado wasn't as successful. And a lot of it was because adjustments that were made by Munguia, and I think to me, it was after the sixth round, I think Munguia just kind of took off and, the way he was punching through the guard. So I think Eric Morales is definitely wearing on a positive level for Munguia. And I love it, man. So I like seeing young fighters improve, especially in tough competition.
Yeah, man. I think you're right. It seems like after the midway rounds, Munguia took off, but before that, I thought he did very well. Like, we all know Munguia to be a bit of a slow starter. And like Run said, I also saw a lot of improvements. I thought his head movement was pretty good. He had a good little rhythm going. On top of that, too, like, loved the combination punching and the activity rate. Like, I remember texting in a certain group thread saying something like, okay, well, I just hope Munguia's tank holds up because his volume was impressive, and it did hold up. I was very surprised, so I think that he has tools that he is developing, and, I think he can have a moment at middleweight. I know that, like Sean said, there's a lot of naysayers of Munguia, but I always accepted him for what he was. Like, I never thought, oh, this guy's like the greatest thing of all time. But I thought that he, with that young kind of mentality, he can go in there, he can bang. He's got one hell of a chin. But now he's shown us that he can improve. So I'm excited to see where this young man goes, and I think he can make some noise at middleweight at the WBC. Speaking of, we'll be talking about the WBC and what happened with their meeting down in Mexico. But I don't know if it was in Mexico, but we'll be talking about that a little bit later. But one of the things that came out is that he'll be in line to fight Deveryanchenko next to be a mandatory for Jermall Charlo. I already thought he was ranked number one anyways, but I like the Deveryanchenko fight. What do you guys think?
That would be a great fight for him. And I wanted to mention that it's very encouraging to go from, thinking about Munguia, as a limited fighter, not really being excited for his fights because you're wondering, well, is this the fight where he gets totally exposed? You know, so it's very encouraging to see him slowly progress, and having those little touch-up fights where you can see that he's getting better and better. It's like I think we all understood that he was limited, but now we're seeing him roll the shots a little more, and maybe he'll eventually get that Chavez head movement where the punches are hitting him, but he's kind of rolling them and he's keeping his chin down. So he doesn't necessarily make these big head movements where he's always not being able to get touched, but he's getting touched, but not that hard because he's rolling the shots. But I think the Derevyanchenko fight would be a great fight for him, and we'll see how that goes if it in fact happens.
Man, that's a great point. As far as him rolling the shots, I mean, it could look painful, but this guy can just take punches, I'll tell you. And man, I think he matches up pretty well with some of these middleweights right now. Like I said this on Twitter, like I think that he could beat Andrade right now. Like to me, I consider Andrade to be a 4-round fighter. And then after that, he kind of slows down and he doesn't really move as much. And if Munguia can get off just as fast as Andrade, like I think he could sustain a volume that Andrade simply couldn't keep up with. And I don't think that Andrade would be able to put Munguia down. So I think that they could possibly try to pursue that fight. I think, as far as the Charlo fight, like I think Charlo would definitely have an advantage, but it's still a good fight. I think it's still a better fight than the Montiel fight, which gave Charlo problems. So I think Munguia is in a really good seat right now. I'm really impressed with him. And like Run PMC said, man, credit to El Terrible, Eric Morales. And I'm just enjoying the ride, man. Like, and I had the last fight called accurately. Like I didn't understand why everybody thought it would be a 50-50 fight against Rosado. I said, well, don't tell me, tell the odds makers. I don't hear anybody putting any money on this fight. The odds were pretty wide for everybody saying it was 50-50. The odds were wider than Teofimo versus Lomachenko, and a lot of people put money on Teofimo. So I thought the odds did speak for themselves in a way, but I'm excited to see what he does next.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a positive thing for boxing fans. Anytime you get another potential opponent out there, a true challenge, like you said, Derevyanchenko, even though I know you made the point on the last show where you were saying that, you kind of lumped Rosado and Derevyanchenko in that same, tough luck fighters where they lose fights, that, maybe they should have got the nod, maybe they didn't, but they're tough. But are they really truly a test? And I think that Derevyanchenko is actually a higher level than Rosado as far as more of a threat, especially the style he has, because I see him as a much better inside fighter. And I think that he has enough challenge that he can create as far as his head movement, because he's a good boxer too, that he can create some challenges for Munguia that we'll see that continued development. That's what I definitely want to see. So before, I'll be honest, when I think that's part of the gap, Chicano, that we're seeing. Like for me, I'm not putting money on a fight, but I think the unknown factor is like, man, is Munguia going to get better because he gets hit so often? Like the doubt is so big as far as his vulnerability, as far as getting hit, maybe getting hit by a clean shot, and then it's all about momentum. Rosado came off that big shot off for Beck, the bully. So the combination, I think, led to people calling a 50-50 fight. Plus, it sounded good. Like that knee-jerk reaction that boxing fans tend to do. But reality, like you said, it is what it is, and it played out as, if you really look at it big picture, the way you think it play out. And, shout out to both men, but Rosado, he put out a good performance, but Munguia was a better man, and, I'm excited for it. The young lion stepping up.
Exactly. And you make a good point. I think that styles do make fights, and for Munguia, I think the Andrade fight might be a little bit easier than Derevyanchenko. Like, Derevyanchenko, he's old and he's worn, and he's only getting more worn. But, I mean, that's a good one. Like, I think it'd be exciting while it lasts. But I just think that Munguia's pure youth and freshness might give him the advantage. So we'll look forward to that one if it happens. We got a lot of time to talk about what fights might come up. This is all pretty fresh. And, I know as boxing fans, we get a little impatient, want to talk about that next fight right away. But we got time, and we got a whole hell of a lot of boxing coming up. And another fight that happened on the weekend was David Benavidez versus Kyron Davis. Sean, what'd you think, man, about that fight and where David Benavidez is at currently?
Okay, so inside the ring, Benavidez, I think one of the best combination punchers. He's a violent fighter. He's very imposing. he's a big guy, and he brings a lot of, you know, things to the table as far as a fighter. I mean, I know that he takes exception to the fact when people bring up the fact that he gets hit a lot, but he said a lot of that as far as the adjustments, and he does make adjustments for the fight. He made adjustments for his last fight he had with Davis, and I thought he looked good, but he did what he was supposed to do. I mean, it was a replacement fighter, a guy not on his level, and Benavidez, took care of business in his hometown. Now, that being said, outside of the ring, that's where I get frustrated. I know it's not just a pound, but again, it's a trend. It's something that we see again as far as him being overweight on the scale. And the fight was not, a mandatory eliminator. So the fight continued and there was no issues. So the fight continued. Obviously, Davis wants to get that payday too. So they would move forward on that. But when I saw that, it actually took a lot of steam out of me because I've been such proponent of Benavidez and, champion him because I feel like he's a big thing that a lot of naysayers of Canelo are using and kind of throw out there like he's avoided and things like that. But, he was avoided because, he created that void himself by not being available, by losing the belt on the scale. And you would think that would wake somebody up, but here we go again. So, it's kind of like, wash and repeat with Benavidez to me at this point. I know what to expect. I'm excited for him. I keep wanting him to, really truly commit. I don't know, maybe he wasn't as motivated because it was a fill-in fighter, but perception is reality. So when I saw that scale, I was, let down again.
Yeah, I mean, I think Benavidez looked good. I don't know what the contract said, but they said that the weight was a +1 off of that, so he was within weight according to whoever they're interviewing on his team. That he was within the weight with the contract, which I think is fine. I mean, I don't think I don't really care about weight classes. This is just me personally. I don't care about weight classes as much as just like whatever's on the contract, just go after it. I just want to see the fights. If it's a title fight, make it. If not, I really don't care. That's just me personally because if David can just make weight for the title fights, I don't think it's a big deal, me personally. But I think he looked good. I think he looked sort of like in the beginning, it looked sort of like he was sparring, honestly. But then he just picked it up and broke him down. I thought it was funny. Breadman in the corner, in Davis's corner, was saying, "Oh, he's about to. He just blew his load. He's about to slow down." I'm like, oh no, that was like it was like I think he said in like the fourth round, and then Benavidez probably had one of his best rounds the next round, and it's just you have to. I think the only guys that'll be able to beat him is someone that could take a shot in the volume, and also just be able to give it back to him. Because if not, you're just going to get swarmed, and it's just going to beat you down with like on a scale of like 1 to 10, he's going to hit you with a bunch of like 6s and 7s and some 8s, and it's just going to break you down. So, but I'd like to see him in the big fight next, whether it's Charlo. We know it's not Canelo now, so I mean, maybe hopefully just someone big because I don't really like I wasn't happy with he was scheduled to fight Uzi, and I just wanted to see him fight in a big fight because I think the world could see how he is good, even though he's flawed, because every boxer has their weaknesses. But I think that I think Canelo would be the only one that could really give him issues in the weight class right now. I don't really see anyone else that are active fighters that could give him issues.
No, Paul, what'd you think, man?
Man, I gotta be honest. I was so pumped up after the Rosado and Munguia fight that I flipped over the channel and saw what was happening, and I was just like, whatever, I don't even care. So, you know what I mean? Given the circumstances, just like Gringo said, the 1 pound extra and the opponent only having so much to prepare. I mean, it's not Benavidez's fault, but at the same time, it wasn't an intriguing matchup to me enough. And I hate the way boxing does this, how they cross program each other, and you got to basically roll over. You can't even catch the interview. You got to go see if you could catch a couple rounds. And to be honest, like I said, I only saw a little bit of it, and David did what he had to do. I mean, what else was he gonna do? It was a guy that had zero chance of beating him.
Yeah, it's good you didn't watch his older brother fight because that was bad.
Oh no, that fight I was more interested in. I actually saw more.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, it sounds
I
like Nopal did what I did. You watch the Canelo replay, and then you watch the Benavidez undercard, and then you go to the Munguia fight because that's the closer, impressive fight.
Yeah, I was more interested in Jose's fight because we all know that he's vulnerable because of his legs. So I want to see what's going on. Plus that he's fighting an Argentinian. Them guys got a big reputation for being tough as nails, you know. So I wanted to see what was going on there, you know.
Do you think he won, or do you think who
No,
do you think won, or do you think it was a
No.
draw?
no, I don't think he won. But at the same time, I don't think the other guy did as much to win, to secure
Right,
the win. So I was okay with the whatever happened. But at the same time, I mean, like I said, I don't think he won, and you know, I don't really think the other guy won either. You know, he probably did better than Jose, but given the circumstances, the leg and all that, come on, man, you couldn't try to do a little bit more to win.
Was it his left leg, the
I,
injured leg?
I thought it was like the right leg, you know.
It was the right leg.
Yeah, it looked
I
like
don't
his footing was off all night because it always seemed like he was, his balance was always, kind of off. And then his volume wasn't very good as far as Jose Benavidez. Like he just didn't look right the whole entire night. You know how I had it like 7-5 with, to me, going for his opponent, which is,
Right.
like I said, it's in my range. Like that's not a robbery or anything like that.
Yeah.
They're going to give to Jose Benavidez, especially on his brother's undercard, in Arizona, and I get that.
Right.
But, man,
Yeah.
like, and I was so high on him. I mean, I remember like going to him when he was with Freddie Roach, and man, couldn't wait to see him fight. I'm talking about like Pacquiao Margarito on that undercard, and nobody was even in the stadium, man. Like I went early. I couldn't wait. And to see the where he is now is sad, but that's what happens with injuries and lack of dedication, man. I hate to say that. I got respect for him and his family, but that's how it translates to me. So
Yeah, he looked, in my opinion, I thought I didn't score it, so it could have very easily been a draw, but I thought he lost, honestly. Like, but I wasn't scoring round to round, so it's not, so I can't say he did, but if anyone won, I thought it was the other guy. I didn't think he looked good. And it was like, because you know how him and David both throw those punches, but they're sort of like jumping. So it's like when you don't have a foundation under you, that's what you're going to look like, just sort of crazy out there.
Oh, yeah. I'd like to give a shout out to El Capitan, D-Style Boxing in the house. We also got Pound for Pound Boxing Real News, JC, Rider of the Storm here. And yeah, man, a lot of great observations. And I agree with a lot of that. Run, you were mentioning this whole, well, it was in the contract. Like, to me, I feel like that's just a fancy new way of saying catch weight. I mean, there's the difference between not making weight and going in at the contractor weight. You're still making weight if it's in the contract. So this whole oh, it's a pound. Like, to me, I think that's just like a subtle way of kind of getting away with the fact that it's a catch weight. You just don't want to call it catch weight. So you go, oh, well, they agreed. That's a catch weight. You know what I mean? That's my opinion. But it really didn't matter that much. I mean, this was a 10-rounder, but obviously Benavidez didn't need those rounds. This was an undersized middleweight coming in, although he did come to win. So I also watched this fight later. I went back and I watched it, and I don't know, part of me thought about not watching it, but then, I thought, okay, well, this guy's the new boogeyman of the super middleweight division. So I need to take a look. And, I don't know. I got to say, dude, I saw a lot of the same flaws that I've seen in Benavidez that I haven't really talked about too vocally. Like, I've never really thought that Benavidez was the boogeyman or would be the one to give Canelo problems. Like, I always thought that out of all of them, my mind changed over time, but out of all the super middleweight champions, like, I always thought Billy Joe Saunders would present the most problems to Canelo. And I know that some people are saying, well, Benavidez brings a different set of skills, and that's true, but Canelo's faced those types of skills before. He's fought big men. And I don't necessarily think Benavidez is a guy who uses his strength. I mean, if you watch a lot of his fights, he doesn't ever really use his physical strength. He might not have as much physical strength as people that are shorter and more stocky. Like, I've seen him get pushed back multiple times all the time. I've never seen him use his weight on a person. Like, he doesn't utilize his weight or utilize his strength. He gets pushed back very easily. On top of that, too, he's got some of the same flaws that Munguia has, but Benavidez seems to get away with it. I think they have a lot of the same skill sets, high volume, but I mean, the defense is pretty much non-existent from Benavidez. He kind of puts his hands up, but anybody with real pop could get through that guard very easily. Benavidez gets hit everywhere, gets hit in the body, and I know he kind of welcomes punches like, young Chavez Jr. used to in his prime, but I mean, that's not really going to work for too long. So I think he's got bad footwork as well. Like, people want to talk about Canelo's footwork. Like, I don't know, man. Benavidez, like he's really good at doing what he wants to do when he can do it, but he could get offset. Like, he can't really fight on the back foot. Like, he has to reset himself every time. And then he likes taking his own breaks. So Benavidez, like, if people want to think he's the new boogeyman, I mean, that's fine. All I can say is that I think he's lucky that Canelo might be moving up, and we'll be talking about that next. Like, I think he's got a lot of room to develop, but after the champions, and Canelo cleaned out all the champions, I think this division is pretty thin. So I think he's safe for now, but he needs to develop. And those are my thoughts.
Hey, Chicano, that's a great point. Something you brought up as far as the vulnerability of, David Benavidez, and not really seeing the more development or growth as far as his ability. But what about? Okay, so you did say you had an appreciation for Caleb Plant, and that fight, did that intrigue you more? I mean, not even going to Canelo, because obviously there's a huge gap there. But I'm saying, what about that? I mean, they're both at 168. Would you see that as more of a closer fight, or you still feel about the same way that David Benavidez would run through him?
Actually, I feel it's a closer fight than I originally thought, especially after watching the Canelo versus Plant fight. Like, I thought that was Plant on his best night, and I was very impressed with his footwork. His stamina surprised me. His activity rate surprised me. And, he's got a very good lead left hand. Obviously, that's his dominant hand that he uses. And Benavidez is really good at throwing combinations when you allow him to and you're stationary. And he's also very long. So, he's very good at, like, kind of chasing you if you're moving back. But when it comes to somebody moving very well laterally, I think he has a little bit more difficulty connecting. So I think I would still probably favor Benavidez, but that fight's a lot closer than I originally thought.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear someone else say it, because internally that's kind of what I came away with, is that some of the things that I saw from Caleb Plant surprised me, and not really seeing a huge difference in the development. And maybe that was the opponent. That was obviously you look at the level of opponent, because some people play towards their opponent when they're fighting them, but I think that fight's a lot more competitive than when I first thought about it.
Yeah, me too. And the other thing too is, like, everybody was talking about Benavidez's hand speed. Like, after watching the Canelo Plant fight, like, I think his hand speed's about average. Benavidez can get off when you're just shelled up, and then he could throw a nice little shoe shine. But as far as actual hand speed and a firefight, I don't necessarily see this advantage. I think his hand speed is probably a little slower than Canelo's, definitely slower than Plant's.
No, you just said something key right there. Like, I was noticing the difference where people just assume, he's so big, huge opposing force as far as David Benavidez. A lot of those, crazy 45 punch combinations, when he has you up against the ropes, he's not always throwing, with his foot placed, and his feet set. Sometimes he's just kind of throwing punches out there. I mean, he's not always putting all his weight behind the shots, and getting enough power behind the shots. I mean, he's throwing shots sometimes to throw shots. He does throw a lot, and he does have, obviously, power, but it's not everything's just devastating, just breaking the person down. So that's something that I noticed, at least for this fight.
I think I'm a little bit different opinion than you all. I think Benavidez is gonna put a hurting on Plant if they fight, and I'm not saying Plant won't hit him, but I just think Plant fought the fight of his night, or the fight of his life, a few weeks ago, and I think Benavidez is just gonna do what Uzcategui did to Plant just earlier. And I just think it's the youthfulness. I think he's going to use his length more if he fights Plant. I think it's going to benefit when he throws that jab out there, even though he misses a lot with the jab. He's just going to put it on him, and he might not land. Like, Canelo wasn't landing on Plant a lot early, but he was still landing on his arms, like not landing punches like by the scoring definition, but he's still breaking him down that way. And I think that I'd pick Benavidez to win. I don't know. It might be a decision, but I don't think it will be as close as we might think. I think that Plant just fought the fight of his life the other week, and I just don't see it for me personally.
No, I mean, hey, don't get me wrong. I would definitely have David Benavidez. I'd say it would be
Right.
closer.
Yeah.
I went from, like, a murder to a homicide. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
like,
God.
yeah. Because
Okay,
before I was
got it.
thinking like straight slaughter. Like, before, I would always, I'm being honest, I always thought like the PBC was kind of keeping all those guys available to be big fights and not have them face each other, because they limit each other off. Where now it's looking like they're going to at some point have to, even though Caleb Plant got this fight, as far as Benavidez and Charlo, if that were to happen. But as far as like how I saw the fight prior to both of them fighting and how, Caleb Plant, yeah, he had the fight of his life. I mean, I didn't see anything that Caleb Plant could do. Now I see some things that could do that could, have the fight last longer, not do anything to win. So let me clarify that. But David Benavidez will fuck Plant up without question.
Yeah, I agree too. And I'm just saying the fight is like, I agree with Gringo. That's where I'm at. Like, I do agree that Benavidez would win. So it looks like D-Style is here ready to take some bets. Like, hey, man, I'm not interested, man. I got Benavidez, but I'll say this, like, if Plant was like a 5-1 underdog, I would consider maybe throwing some money. But if he was like a 2-1 underdog, I wouldn't even really consider it at all. But if the odds were like wide, I'd say, hey, man, you got to maybe put a little bit of money on Plant, maybe. And the idea of him knocking out Plant, I'm not so sure about that. I could see it going to the cards. I don't think that Benavidez could get to Plant quicker than Canelo. That's just my opinion.
Right. I agree with that. I think it would be a decision, but I think it's just going to be, he's just going to put a hurting on Plant. Like, I don't think he's going to knock him out. I don't think he'll knock him down, but I think Plant's going to be visibly beaten up by the end of the fight.
Exactly. And D-Style makes a good point, and I'm glad he's saying it. The Capitan is saying it, so I don't have to. He says, in my opinion, Canelo could have picked up the pace earlier versus Plant, but decided to take his time. And that's kind of what I saw too. And we've seen patterns of that. And that's something I've been talking about that I think more people are picking up on. So, people like me and D-Star are kind of like saying, hey, just consider looking at the fight like this. And so I'm glad that that's getting out there a little bit more.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been talking about too, about how Canelo, he could still win rounds by not doing much, but still by breaking his opponents down all at the same time, which is impressive.
Definitely, man. Well, let's get to the big news. We'll see what Benavidez does next, but he might be the king of 168 for a little while because, as you all know, we got the news that Canelo might be moving up to cruiserweight. I want to know what you guys think. What are your initial thoughts on all this? There's a lot of ways to look at it, and we just got this news, so Gringo, what do you think, man?
All right, so I'm gonna give it from both perspectives. My first initial reaction, because even though it may seem like I was coming down on Benavidez as a negative, that's the fight that I wanted. So in my Gringo mind, that's the dream fight I was hoping that would take the haters away and put the naysayers away. Fight the guy in 168 to truly be undisputed and take any doubt away. But it didn't happen, and I was a combination of shocked, extremely shocked, and disappointed. But then I realized, like, hey, it's his career. It's not the fans. It's what Canelo does, and he sees, and how it was explained to me, when listening to how Eddie Reynoso was talking to the WBC, and when he announced it, and then going back and reading and hearing about because Canelo's sparring heavyweights, Andrew Ruiz and Frank Sanchez and other heavyweights and bigger fighters, and now the WBC is going to move cruiserweight weight back down to the original weight from 200 to 190. Again, I don't like it, but it is Canelo, and hey, it definitely gives us something to talk about for sure. And if nothing else, it gets, because the guy he'll be facing, he is a champion. He's I believe he's on a 11 streak. He hasn't lost since 2016 to Tony Bellew. And so is he fighting the, I guess the most vulnerable champion? I don't say weaker because he's a champion, but the most vulnerable champion. Yeah, but it's still a cruiserweight. So it shocked me. I didn't like it, but I want to play checkers, and Canelo wants to play chess. And he's talking about building legacy. And I'm worried about, shutting haters up and fanboys up, where he's way past that, man. He's thinking about building his legacy. And, I think this is something that will do it. We won't appreciate it maybe in the moment, because the timing, I was like, damn, man, you're not going to even like let this marinate. You're going to announce it already, but that's when you do it, at these conventions. So disappointment, shock, but acceptance, and, fuck it. Let's go, man. Legacy. I'm ready.
Dude, that's a great point, man. And I totally agree. Like, I'm past the point of Canelo, like, having to shut up the haters, because all of a sudden Benavidez was the next guy to see. But for years we're hearing that Charlo and Andrade were being avoided for years. And these guys want the fight. They're still undefeated, but now everybody wants Canelo to fight Benavidez. But I mean, if Benavidez doesn't shine after Canelo beats him, there's a possibility that win might just be so-so. I mean, he's not a defending champion. He's still undefeated, but he might just be another title holder, like when you look back in history. And as far as looking back in history goes, it's like you said, Sean. Yeah, this Makabu, and I hope I'm saying his name right, this Makabu guy is a defending champion. And sure, he's not the top fighter of that division, but when everybody talks about what Roy Jones did and moving up, I mean, everybody just talks about what he did and how great it was and how great it would have been if he retired at that point. But nobody goes, oh, but he wasn't the best heavyweight at the time. Kind of like when people go back and talk about Chavez, they don't ever, like Canelo, he gets all this criticism, like, oh, Canelo, oh, but the catch weights, oh, but I thought, he got a gift against these people. But when you hear Chavez, you don't hear like, oh, he had a catch weight against, Whitaker, 89-0, but you don't hear them say, oh, well, you got a couple gifts along the way. You don't hear anything like that. So, like, I think we might be mad in real time, but when history tells all this, they're going to look at it objectively. And objectively speaking, moving up 2 weight classes is pretty impressive, in my opinion. It's a rare thing to do. Go ahead.
No, definitely. I didn't mean to cut you off in the thought. I was going to say real quick, because you said something that was really key to me, that, with him playing checkers as far as his legacy and where he wants to go. And like, we kind of broke down, why David Benavidez may not be the boogeyman like we're saying. He doesn't have a title. He's floundered on the scale twice, lost a belt on the scale, had, substance issues. He still got time, even though there's a lot of people from the fan perspective that there's no interest drawn from Canelo to want that fight. I mean, I know people hate, I hate hearing that. There's something I also thought about too that was brought up on the live I saw yesterday. Shout out to HCP. I think Calix brought it up, and I was like, yeah, you're right. This might actually be a power move, playing chess, not checkers again with Canelo to force these freaking guys to fight each other. You know what I mean? Like, why not that? Why sit there and wait for their, as he put it, Canelo stimulus check? Why don't you go out there, fight each other, give me a reason to fight you? In the meantime, I want to cement my legacy. Because right now, I mean, even though like, oh man, you shut some haters up, but looking on the big picture, a David Benavidez win, to be honest, really, I mean, is it really that big as far as like his legacy terms? Not right now. I mean, unless he gets a signature win, I think. Not discrediting him at all, but I mean, he's still young. But at the same time, that's the thing. He's young. That fight has time to happen. And at the same time, Canelo's already said next year he's going to fight 3 times. So it's not completely off the board. So.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I mean, a lot of good points, and there's a lot of ways to look at it, man. And, one of the other ways I look at it is like when people talk about great champions, and this is just my private thinking, and I don't know if y'all feel the same way, but I think it's impressive when a fighter is a champion in multiple weight classes. Like, I always kind of thought to myself, like, oh, it sucks that Canelo's never going to get that next weight class. So only ever be like a 4-weight division champion, because in my mind, it never crossed my mind that he would actually go to cruiserweight to do this. And I think a lot of people felt that same way. And Right Out of the Store makes a good point. And he says, if you look at the video when Reynoso was talking to the WBC committee, everyone gasped when he said that Canelo wanted his next fight at 200 pounds. Like, that's my thing. To me, I was like, what? Like, it really shocked me. But, and I said this on Twitter, like, get used to everybody just thinking that this is a foregone conclusion. Like, after the initial shock, everybody's going to act like it's no big deal. But it is a big deal. Like, this is a legitimate 5th weight class. The guy's a legitimate defending champion, and he's 3rd best in his division, which is not that bad.
No, I mean, if you want to use the term, I know it's derogatory as far as cherry picking, but I mean, if you're going to cherry pick champions and then you're going to go up divisions, and not only are you going to go up and go for your 5th division title, but I mean, you're already undisputed. I mean, you talk about legacy. It's not just Mexican fight history, but it's just boxing in general. I mean, he's going to uncharted territory big time. And, big props to him, man. And I'll admit it openly. I've always kind of questioned his career. I've always had resentment towards like the Khan fight and stuff like that. But man, that shit's over. This is 2021 and Canelo's making it happen. It's his world. We're just in it, man. And we're just watching. So we can talk about this. And I hope that guy can eventually be a opponent of him at some point, because it's all around what he wants to do. And, if that's what he wants to do, it really does make sense once the shock wears off.
Oh, yeah. And Marion Brown has chimed in. He says, Canelo's only doing this to say he's a 5-division champ. How is this different from Tank going up to fight Barrios? Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways, homie. Like, I guess if you just wanted me to, make this easy on you, like, Dude, all I have to say is that Mukabu's actually a real champion. He's at least top 5, no matter where you look. A lot of people have him top 3. Barrios was what, like maybe top 10, not even a real champion. So, I mean, for anybody to even try to compare Tank to Canelo on any level is just embarrassing. Like, I wouldn't try again, publicly. I hope this is just a troll account. But yeah, man, Run PMC, what do you think, man?
I mean, I'm sort of split on this one. Like, I see what Canelo's doing. I wish he would have just either stayed at 168. And like I said, like, to prevent any like mandatories or necessary things, I wouldn't be opposed to having him just vacate the belts, and then that frees up everything, and then just making big fights. Or going to 175 and challenging the champions. The problem with 175, they're all sort of tied up right now in contracts. Like Benavidez fighting Marcus Brown, and I think, and then he has 2 belts. I think the other champions are Joe Smith is sort of in like this 2-fight deal with Top Rank where he's sort of obligated, and I don't know what Bivol's doing, but so I could see why Canelo jumped the weight class just to pick up another belt in the meantime. And plus he's staying active. So I think that's the main thing that people forget is like when you fight 4 to 5 times in a 12-month period, you could still take these like quote unquote like tune-up fights. But granted, this is a tune-up fight that some people could look at, but this is against a champion in two weight classes above. So is it really a tune-up fight? And I've also seen some people like comparing this to like when Sugar Ray Leonard fought Donnie Lalonde, and I think that's incorrect because I think of this more as like a Roy Jones Jr. fighting John Ruiz, not Sugar Ray Leonard fighting Donnie Lalonde. And if people want to look into that, they could just look in what surrounded those weigh-ins and that type of thing. So I mean, but at the same time, it's cool to see Canelo doing this. And I just hope that some of the fights, because I don't really care about this fight as much. I don't know that much about the opponent, but I'd still watch it, and I'm looking forward to Canelo getting the victory and setting him some big fights for 2022 after this.
Great point. And Nopal, what do you think, brother?
I just wanted to say after hearing all you guys, I think the biggest thing for me is, it's not that I don't like this fight. It's the fact that, Canelo's not giving us enough time to enjoy these victories, these fights. It's like if I go buy a Lexus, you know what I mean? And, 5 minutes later, my wife comes and says, I bought you this Mercedes. Like, how am I supposed to take the news? I'm barely getting adjusted to this car, and then you're going to bring me another one. Like, damn, out of nowhere, he's going to fight a cruiserweight, or supposedly, he's not. It literally takes me about 3 weeks probably on Twitter, still talking about the last fight, you know what I mean? And, that's one of the situations, but there's so many things that go into this, like, as far as, I'll be honest, as far as him fighting Charlo, Andrade, or Benavidez, I actually view those as cherry picks. And keep in mind that it's at a division where he's already the smallest guy at 168. Now he wants to jump up 25 pounds from, or I think it's what, 22-pound weight jump just to fight another champion. Like, it's just, it's too much to process right now. And, to be honest, the only fight that intrigues me at this point would be a Benavidez fight. But, if I look at it from Canelo's perspective, maybe he wants to make that, maybe he views Wakabi as an easier fight than Benavidez. Maybe he sees it and he needs that extra burst of confidence or, mental edge. And maybe that's why he's doing it. And just like Ron said, Benavidez isn't available right now. So, it would be a dream situation for him to go up, win that belt up there, and then go back down and fight Benavidez at 175 and just settle there at that weight class, But I think that, when I think about it also, he's given up so much of a weight advantage fighting at cruiserweight. I mean, the guys at cruiserweight could probably end the fight with one punch, and the dude's gonna overweigh him by who knows how much. I know the fight's gonna be at 190, I believe, because they did bring Bridgerweight in, so they lowered. I believe people are saying that they lowered the weight from 200 to 190.
So it is 190.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
I didn't
so.
know that.
So
I wonder what the guy walks at, because I might take back what I said about this being a Donnie Lalonde situation if it's at 190.
Well, I was hearing that he's come in under 200 pounds a number of times. Like he comes in at like one. This is what I've heard. I haven't looked at it myself. Like around 197. Like he doesn't come in at like at the 200-pound limit.
Okay, that's more reassuring, because I'm like, if this guy's like walking, like rehydrates to 220 and then he has to come down to 190, then that was like what D Style was saying a while ago about how like how are they going to like figure this out if they have the Bridgerweight division? What happens to that cruiserweight champion? Now they have to be able to drop 10 more pounds. But if he comes in at like 190, 195, then I don't think it's a big deal. But if he was like rehydrating up in the 220s, then that is a big deal, I think.
Yeah, people are saying that he's a small cruiserweight. And I'd like to just get to the chat real quick. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. We got some new people dropping in. Uncle Fester's in the house. Outlaw. He says the haters are saying he's moving up to cruiserweight to avoid Charlo and Andrade at 160. The amount of idiots in boxing is mind-boggling. All right. And we got Puro Sur in the house, man. We got Man in Water too. Thank you all so much for joining us. 92 AKU. I wanted to know what his thoughts were. It says here, is the bad guy from Yu-Gi-Oh? He might be, man. You know, who knows? I like the name. You know, I'm going to like saying it. You know, I like those syllables. It rolls off the tongue nice. Jose R is in the house. Thank you. He says that Canelo is a clown. Okay. And all right. It's David. Benavidez is struggling to make weight. Well, here's the other thing, too. I was thinking about, like, you know, with Canelo being up at cruiserweight, it gives the fighters at 160 and 168 the opportunity to actually do something. If he's that far gone, like, let's see what these guys can do. Like, there's no reason these guys can't fight each other. We've all been saying this. Objective boxing fans have been saying this for a while. Like, these other guys are allowed to fight each other. Not everybody has to wait on Canelo. And now Canelo is, like, way, way up there. So David Benavidez, I think this is kind of a good thing for him. I think he's been spared. He would have been food for Canelo. On top of that, I also think maybe, you know, he was starving himself to make weight. He's had trouble making weight. He's not coming in at a proper 168 pounds when he should be, you know, just to make a good case that he should be the next guy, that he can take things seriously. But why not go to 175? Like, you'd be more comfortable there, and then Canelo will come down, and then it's more feasible. On top of that, this opens up other possible fights that people weren't thinking about. Like, well, Canelo's only 31. Like, it's possible he could do something else around that high weight class of cruiserweight or around there. Hell, you know, people were saying that the Ward fight wasn't feasible because, you know, hey, you know, Ward can't make 168, but maybe he'll come in at 175 and Canelo can beat him there on the way down. There's a lot of things that could happen. I mean, if we didn't think that this cruiserweight fight was going to happen, like, we need to expand the options for Canelo, because now, I mean, I didn't think this was an option, honestly. So, like, I don't want to talk too crazy, but who knows what Canelo could do? Like, I don't want to go nuts and start talking like he could fight a heavyweight. I'm not there yet. I'll let Nopal start, and then maybe I'll follow his lead. I'm not going to be the first one, but all I could say is I'm excited, you know, and there's a lot of new fights for us to consider.
Yeah. One thing I want to add, and you guys all brought up good points that I'm very convinced of at this point, that the move is also addition by subtraction. By removing himself, Canelo, from 168, they can clear themselves out. I think Benavidez can, you know, either, get Charlo, meet him at 168. You know, I know Charlo talked about him going down, which that's never going to happen. He can't even make 168. Or what I would like, just David Benavidez goes to 175, and that division kind of get that cleared up, and then it'd be a lot easier for Canelo. So like I said, it's also a lot of strategic moves that can be made by Canelo at this point. You know, Canelo and his team, Eddie Reynoso, said they're also open to fighting in the Congo, where Junior Mabuka is from. You know, and I think that's interesting. And you bring Don King back into relevancy again. I mean, you know, there's a lot of positives, man. And there's nothing wrong. Gotta love Don King. I mean, he put together the greatest boxing cards of all time ever. You know, so just to have him, and just from the historic standpoint, I'm excited. You know, because like I said, it's addition by subtraction. You know, because I'll go ahead and say right now that he's not going to fight all the guys we listed. You know, he wants them to pick each other off. You know, because their wins will mean more at that point, right? So I think that David Benavidez, Charlo, Bivol, Beterbiev, they're, you know, whoever, he's not going to fight all of them. I'm convinced of that, you know, so they have to, especially if they're under the same banner with the PBC, you know, as far as Beterbiev and Benavidez and Charlo, you know, they have to fight each other. He's not going to fight both. He's only going to fight one of them.
Yeah, man. You know, it doesn't take much for everybody.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. All I was going to say is it doesn't take much for people to collectively agree on who the next opponent should be. They just have to face each other, man. It's not that hard. Like Benavidez, get busy. Like, don't be scared to move to 175, in my opinion. You're huge. You're a big dude. You might be, a little bit stronger at that weight. Why aren't you moving up to 175? Is it because there's bigger guys there? And the other thing, too, is like, well, if there are bigger guys, like, I don't understand why people are complaining that this isn't a good fight. Like, I was hearing this even from a lot of the haters saying, hey, Canelo can really do what he wants next. Like, he did exactly what everybody wants boxers to do, which is go undisputed. He just did exactly what you want boxers to do. So, if he chooses to go up and fight a defending champion up 2 weight classes, when previously it was, hey, whatever he wants to do next is okay, but then you don't like this fight. Like, I don't know, man. To me, that sounds like a bit of hating. And that's why I'm glad that Canelo did this, man. Just, take the play away. You know what I mean? Do what you want. Like, he's already proven himself twice over. These guys haven't done anything. So I say, hey, man, bring this fight on.
I was going to say that, what's up with Triple G? He's probably shaking his head right now. Like, by the time I get to fight this guy, we're going to have to meet each other at heavyweight, coming from a guy that didn't even want to go to 168 or anything like that, It'll be virtually impossible for him to get that fight now unless he moves up a little, right?
No, that's fair, man. I think Canelo's reset the board, man. Like, he put it where he's completely in control. He's in control as far as, like, figuratively, but like now he truly has control of the board because, like, these guys have to fight each other. People that are waiting on the Canelo stimulus check, it's just, you're not going to get it now. You got to do something to shake things up to get Canelo's interest, and right now they don't have it, And I never really thought the Triple G fight was ever going to happen again, to be honest.
Also, I wanted to respond to a comment that I heard G Funky making, like a point that I wanted to say that as far as Canelo getting to do whatever he wants, you can look at that 2 ways, because you get the guys that get to do whatever they want. They get to fight the guys, whoever they want, but they go for the easy touches. At least, we got to be grateful that at least Canelo's trying to do some, put himself in a risk where he could get knocked out with 1 punch. These cruiserweights, they'll bust right through the guard of any of these little guys, and straight up, they can break your ribs. They can break, they can bust your arms. There's a lot of things that Makabu could do. So, we should sit back and kind of appreciate that Canelo's not just going for the easiest moves. I mean, he could sit back and just say, hey, I'll take the Benavidez fight. I'll take the, in fact, I'll go beat up on Triple G, who's 40 years old now. He could just there's a lot of prize fights that he could take easily. So, we got to give him that credit that even though he has the power to do a lot of things that other people don't have the power to do, at least he still keep, giving us some fights that are still risky, No,
definitely. Question, because I know, Paul, I know you and Chicano are big Canelo supporters, big fans of his. And, as far as like G Funky's comment, Mukabu isn't very good in my opinion. I agree. After their live, I went back and saw some highlight, or I want to say lowlights, but some footage of his performances. And he's a limited fighter. But I mean, hey, after, they have weight divisions for a reason. So are you guys concerned
exactly
as far as him flying too close to the sun? Like, fuck, Canelo, what are you doing, man? Like, this guy could really hurt you, as far as
I am personally.
Dude, I am too. Like, this is not easy. Like, I don't know Makabu, but I would favor him to beat any other super middleweight without even looking at it. If I just look at his record, his amount of KOs, like there's like you said, Sean, there's weight classes for a reason. Like, this isn't like the easiest thing just to go do. I think he's going to get full credit for this from me. He's going to be a legitimate 5 weight division champion. Full credit. This guy's a defending champion. And so, we could talk about this for a little while, but we have some other topics to get to. So I want to have a little bit of fun with the co-hosts here. Like, what's going on here is this. Canelo is the champion at super middleweight, and he's moving up 2 weight classes, right, to fight Makabu. So what I'd like to do is start at 130 pounds, and we're going to take a look, and this is according to the Ring Magazine rankings. We're going to see what it looks like if the number 1 fighter of the division moves up 2 weight classes to fight the number 3 guy. Okay. Now, and I understand styles make fights. And also not all these dudes are unified champions, or even the number 3 guy that I mentioned, right? The guy who's in the higher weight class, he's not always a champion, but this is just purely across the board ranking. So when I say these names, I want you to tell me if you think that the guy moving up, if it would be an easy fight for him and if it would be a cherry pick, or just if anything pops off to the top of your head, okay? So we're going to start at 130 pounds. So we have Shakur Stevenson versus Jose Ramirez. All right. Sounds like that's a pretty respectable fight to most people. You know, it'd be weird to think about him going up 2 weight classes. Anybody got anything on that?
Damn.
Can we make that happen,
seems
please?
risky as hell.
No, it's risky, but I like it. I mean, because Jose Benavidez, he's about to. Jose Ramirez, right? Jose Ramirez, he's about to fight December versus Pedraza, December 11th, I believe.
Yeah, you know, I kind of like that fight a bit, but it's definitely not a given, and I think that that would be Shakur's best opponent by far.
It's man. I don't know if I favor Shakur though. So, like to your point of this exercise, I don't know if I favor Shakur in that fight.
You know, like there's a reason that these people don't just go running up, man. That's all I'm saying. Anybody else got anything on this one before we go to the next one?
Shakur is like super skilled, so you know what I'm saying. You don't get more skilled than him.
I think that's a little too much for Shakur if you were to go up and face Ramirez, who's borderline 147 now.
And can bang and is strong.
I think that's a little too much because Shakur's not going to have anything to keep him off him. Like, I like Jamel Herring, but like Jamel Herring and Jose Ramirez are 2 different fighters in my opinion. Like,
right.
Like Jamel Herring, I mean, he has made improvements, but he's still the same fighter to an extent that got outboxed by Memphis Miller of the money team. So I have to remember that.
Yeah, I mean that's that's the weight divisions for a reason, man. So I mean I love Shakur and his ability and his potential, but man, if they made that right now, I mean I'd be fired up. But I'd say Jose Ramirez.
All right. So the next one, 135-pound champion Teofimo Lopez, who's unified, goes up against Ugas at 147 pounds. That's his next step. Cherry pick?
I wouldn't mind seeing that.
He's getting whooped.
I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Teofimo's getting whooped, bro.
Oh, shit. All right. Well, no, Paul, why do you say that, man?
It's just too much, man. I don't think Teofimo can handle that power. You know what I mean? I mean, Ugas ain't known for a lot of power, but he had a really good jab versus Pacquiao. So I don't think he would mentally. I don't think he's prepared for such a big step up, and such a risk. You know, I think it would be an easy win for Ugas.
I think Ugas would piece him up.
Yeah, dude, I think that Ugas could easily outbox Teofimo. There's weight classes for a reason, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I just think him moving up, like Teofimo is really good, and I think he can make noise at 140, but at 147 against Ugas, like Ugas is just way too seasoned at that weight class. I think it would kind of look like the Porter fight, except I think Ugas would be more dominant.
No, I think he'd be a lot more dominant, man. I think they'd be a lot more dominant.
Since we're so familiar with welterweight, even go down the list a little because you said number 3. Even put in the number 4. I mean, could he even beat Danny Garcia? Could he even beat Sean Porter? Could he even, who else? I mean, could he?
He could beat Danny.
I mean, I think that it's a good fight versus Mikey Garcia, but I think even there he'd lose. You
think he loses to Mikey Garcia right now?
I think so. I think Mikey.
Yeah. I don't personally.
You don't? Yeah. If he beat him, I wouldn't be surprised.
So.
Though you're right. But
dude, he lost to Martin. Come on, man.
I don't see.
I am going down the list, though. Keep in mind that we're like at number 5 or 6 welterweight now.
Totally, and that's the thing, And I did say definitely the styles do make fights, because sometimes there's like, hot young up and comers who aren't necessarily ranked, where they might be, but they haven't done anything to earn the ranking yet. And G Funky here says, I want Canelo to defend his belts at 168. Of course you do, G Funky. And you know what? You're allowed to want it.
G Funky. It's not about what you want, baby. This ain't your party.
Hey, you know what?
You don't got the right to cry.
Hey, you know what? G Funky said Canelo could do whatever he wants next. And this is, it doesn't matter ultimately anyways. Like this fight, here's another thing before we go back to my little project. the Reynoso camp, Team Alvarez, they're used to going out and putting out multiple feelers. Like this could just be a swerve to make sure that other people come in at their market rate and don't sit there and cry wanting like 10 million for their next fight. Like nothing's official yet.
Remember, sorry for cutting you off. Remember that Floyd was supposed to fight Devin Alexander too, and he was supposed to fight Amir Khan based on that poll they ran, and he didn't end up fighting either of them. So like Chicano said, it could just be feelers.
Totally. All right, let's go to the next one. And remember, this is all according to the ring rankings, right? Just across the board. Not that we all agree with the rankings. So we have the undisputed champion, another undisputed champion, Josh Taylor, moving up to 154 pounds and fighting Jared Hurd.
Oh. I mean, I don't really think much of Hurd anymore. I mean, obviously,
Me either.
I liked him when he was all action, and then sort of hurt me when Lara lost him off that knockdown in the end. But I don't know. I don't know at this point because I don't know what Hurd's chin's looking like anymore. Because I can't believe he's still making 154 when he like rehydrates into like the 170s on fight night. So
Yeah, I mean,
that's more of a toss up for me than the other ones.
Yeah, I think in that one, like the skill differential, you know, I'm down on Hurd, man. I mean, I'm like on the ground, but I mean, I do think maybe there'd be enough in the tank where, man, I don't know if I could. I think I'd take Josh Taylor in that one. Shit,
Yeah.
man, I can't believe I'm saying that.
You know what? Josh Taylor's a big dude. Did you guys see that little video of him saying hi to Crawford? He's like at least 2 inches taller than Crawford. He's big. He's a big 140 pounder.
Yeah, and I think Hurd. This is just my opinion. Once he's went over, I know K Karoma is a really good trainer, Shakur's trainer, USA Box. I know he's friends with Christine and one of her mentors, but I don't know. I mean, like Hurd just doesn't. I don't think has the style to be with a trainer like that. Just because it's like he's getting caught between styles. Just sort of like when I saw when Amir Khan went over to Virgil Hunter. Like Amir Khan's best defense was his offense, and then when he went to Virgil Hunter, in my opinion, he made him more stationary. And then with a chin like that, now he's just a sitting duck even more. And I think, I mean, Hurd has the chin for the most part, but I think he's going to be more of a sitting duck now that he's trying to implement these, like actually become a boxer at this point.
I mean, that's a great point. And I've always said, and I have the receipts, that I always thought 154 was a little overrated. I think a lot of those guys are kind of chinny, or I don't know. I don't want to use the word chinny, but they get knocked down, bro. So like I always thought 154, wasn't the best division. It's not top heavy and it's not deep. So I think Taylor could possibly win that one. But styles make fights, maybe there was another 154. Like for instance, like I don't think that Taylor would be smart to go in the ring against Tim Tszyu, right? But he's not, top 3, right now.
As far as 154, I think that's kind of why I'm high on it, because it's the parity, you know what I mean? Like just like Brian Castano came up from Argentina, and for me at least, kind of came out because I hadn't seen a lot of them, and then I put up a fight against Charlo. You got Banana Rosario. I mean, 154 has some bangers in it for sure, but even Rosario has a questionable chin, and we already know about J-Rock, and he got pieced up recently. So damn,
Rosario's a questionable body too.
Yeah. I don't know if those bananas, that they help his stamina. I don't know if they help him against punches to the body. Because
needs some more potassium.
Yeah, he needs a new source of potassium.
Man in Water says Ugas is way, way, way better than Makabu. That's not even a good comparison. Bro, you forgot that Canelo is also way better than Josh Taylor. But, I understand your point. So let's head to 147 pounds. We got Errol the Truth Spence moving up to 160 pounds to face Andrade. What are your thoughts?
I think that's a good one.
That's my favorite
one. Fight,
man. I think that's a good one.
Yeah, I think it's a 50-50 in my mind.
Yeah, we just have to see where they're both at. I mean, we still haven't seen Errol try to like shift into different gears since he had his accident. And in Andrade's last fight, he didn't look very good, and he was sitting on the ropes more. It looks like his skills, or maybe just his legs have diminished, and just because he's old. So I think that'd be a pretty good fight just to see where both of them are at. And Spence is big too. Like talks about getting up to like 180, 190 during the off season. So
he's 5'10", right?
Yeah, like around that 5'9", 5'10". Yeah, and Andrade's what, like 5'11", 6 feet. So it's not even like that big. So I think that's a good fight. Both lefties.
Man, I would love that fight, man. It's 50-50 fight to me.
All right, so we got a couple of feasible fights, but these younger champions aren't going up and doing it for their own reasons, and it's their own right. They can be in whatever weight class they want. So let's go to 154. So we got Jermel Charlo, a unified champion, against 168-pounder Caleb Plant.
Shoot. I favor Plant on that one.
I'm going little Charlo.
Be a very tactical fight.
Chicano, I'd say that Benavidez is probably ranked third, ain't he? In that weight division.
According to the ring, he's ranked second.
Oh, okay.
It goes Canelo, Benavidez, Plant, according to the Ring magazine. And that's just what we're going off of. Like I said, we don't have to agree. It's just how they have it ranked. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying Charlo. I mean, keep in mind I'm biased as hell. But I mean, he is. That's the thing. Like with him, he's so unorthodox and crazy in the ring. I mean, yeah, I'd say I would lean Charlo, but I'm saying like slightly, not putting no money down or not even food. Just I would favor him. But that would be tough though.
Yeah,
Run, you got anything on that, Run? I feel like you're still thinking.
I think it's just going to be Plant. I think it's just too big at that point. Too big of a weight difference because we're looking there. We're looking at when you get up to the bigger ones. I think it just becomes too much, and I think that Plant will just outbox them. I was going to say, Charlo has the power to hurt him either.
Exactly, and like you said, he can be outboxed. We've seen it before.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I mean, I think I would favor Plant in this one, and then look at G-Funky said, like he said, arguing with JC. He said, "Man, how am I hating? I just Canelo's gonna beat this dude, and also G-Funky doesn't like these comparisons. Well, hey man, we're just going by the rankings, we're just trying to see what we think about these fights, so give us a better view. All it is objectively comparing a number one ranked fighter going up 2 divisions and fighting the third best. That's all, G-Funky. Enjoy the ride, baby. All right, so let's go to the next one. We got 160-pounder Triple G, ranked number 1 by the Ring magazine, against 175-pound champion Joe Smith Jr.
Oh man, that's a good one, man.
That'll be Triple G's last fight.
Yeah, man, I think he would just get beat down like a noble warrior, but I mean, just too much weight. And that's the other thing too. As we go up, like when you go 130 to 140 pounds or 35 to 47, but now we're going up some weight here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. This is a 15-pound difference.
Yeah, that's just way too much. Like, it's.
I think more than anything, Triple G has always had some kind of mental fear about fighting guys bigger than him. So more than anything, that's a thing that I don't think he ever got over. He could have did that early in his career and just, because they were saying that nobody wanted to fight the guy. But, I mean, he had options. He could have, not saying that he had to fight Ward, but, I mean, he could have moved around a little bit and said, hey, forget the bouts. Let me just do these fights. Get that mental fear out of the way and, go to it. Go to 168 and then fight Ward or, move up and fight Kovalev. Guys like that. I mean, he could have did it. And that's a big reason why the Triple G fans hate Canelo so much because Canelo ended up doing things that Triple G was supposed to do, He was saying that he was whooping heavyweights in sparring, So,
right.
People had high hopes for Triple G. But then this little short-ass redhead from Mexico comes out and does everything that, Triple G was supposed to do,
Yeah, I always found it odd that Triple G, like even Abel Sanchez, when he was training him, would always say like, oh, if G goes up to above 160, he won't be able to make weight and come back down. That's why we're keeping G at 160. Then why are you saying anyone from like 154 to 175 will fight him at their weight and whatever? So it was just odd to me. But I think like Nopal might be right that he just has that. He's just is what he is now. And if he were to go up, like, I don't know. I mean, he might. I mean, I think he would have good fights against some of the guys at 168, but I don't think a jump to 175 is just too much. Even though he might have more boxing skills than Joe Smith, Joe Smith's power is real, and he might just land that. And Triple G does get hit, and then also just being bigger guy, Joe Smith might just land on him, and especially Triple G at his advanced age now might not be able to take it because everyone has the chin. That is like the indestructible chin until one person cracks it, then it's over. like it's over. Like you saw like recent guys as like Chavez Jr. when he fought Fanfara, like he would always brag about walking through guys, just tapping his chin. Once Fanfara landed on him and he jumped up in weight to 175 down. He stopped and quit. And also Brandon Rios. Brandon Rios fought Danny Garcia, who is a power puncher, but that's usually a left hook. He landed that right hand on him, like sort of like a pull counter in a way, and it freaking knocked Rios out clean. Like he was all over the place. So, and you have guys that like those are modern guys that have like indestructible chins. So, every dog has his day.
Oh yeah. All right. So we agree that not a good idea for Triple G just to move up 2 weight classes willy-nilly. All right. So we got the last one that we're going to do. We got Arthur Betterbeef, 175-pounder, moving up 2 weight classes to heavyweight to fight Anthony Joshua.
He dies.
I thought you were going to say Wilder. That I'm like, oh god, that might just be one punch and it's over.
I mean, yeah, dude. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's other ones that where it's like, I could see Wilder being in that slot too. But either way, like, he's going down. I mean, and there's a reason why people stay at 175 pounds, and from 175 to 200, like that's such a big gap. And I know that goes to cruiser, but there's a reason why people don't want to cross that desert. There's some big dudes on that other side.
Yeah. And from the the punch tolerance, how their power is going to translate, what they're comfortable at as far as their mobility, their their endurance. I mean, everything's like they're staying in the weight division for a reason. Some of it is also the opponents too. So these jumps that we're these fantasy time warp jumps that we're doing, like when I'm hearing, they're very jolting because it's like but it is what Canelo's basically doing. So I definitely understand the exercise.
Oh, yeah. And Marion Brown says, if this guy's ranked number 3, then that division is garbage. Well, I do have to say that I've always thought that cruiserweight was slightly overrated. I don't pay attention to it that much. So if you're asking me, like, I'd have to say, like, I don't think the division's that great. But, I think there's a number of divisions that aren't all that great, aren't all that deep. And this division isn't even that top heavy, but I mean, I felt that way back in the day. Like I never thought Bellew was all that, but people thought he was something, so that's just my opinion. So I do agree with you in that sense. Like I'm not sitting there saying that this is like this hot division that Canelo's going into. Like, don't get it twisted.
No. Bellew's best performance was in Creed. Or when he got knocked out by Adonis Stevenson.
Yeah, yeah. All right, man. So let's get into the next subject. Unless anybody has any final thoughts on this Canelo news.
One last thing I have to say is, if they fight in the Congo, that would be pretty cool. If they fought in Kinshasa, that would be pretty cool. Outdoor arena, just for boxing history's sake. I think that'd be cool.
Definitely, man. Yeah, man, I'm all for it. And, this is an international sport. And I do think it's cool when, a superstar goes to just this random country. I mean, we probably haven't seen that in decades, right? So could be very cool. All right, so let's move on to the next subject. This is something that Nopal wanted to shed some light on. It looks like Joshua's kind of going back to Eddie Reynoso, and they've met again to talk. And there's a possibility that this could be like a real team up. So I wanted to know what you all think. Nopal, what do you think, brother? Tell us about this.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it on Twitter. It seems, let me read what Michael Benson said. It says Canelo Alvarez's trainer Eddie Reynoso has revealed he's held further talks with Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn about potential training AJ for the Alexander Usyk rematch. Reynoso said he has many physical qualities, and I think he does not take advantage of them. So we all know that AJ went over there, and took some pictures with the Reynoso camp. Basically he was just doing his big visiting the U.S. and checking out the gyms over here. And we all know that he was looking for a trainer, but we all thought that was that. And, then this comes out and potentially, this opens it up. There's a possibility, and I wanted to pose the question, is that a good idea for AJ? To go to that camp and join the Reynoso team? And is it also a good idea for Reynoso, to pick up AJ and train him?
Sean, what do you think, man?
Oh, wow. So that's actually a lot to process because actually, even though I saw the news and I'm glad Paul brought this back up, I kind of dismissed it as, Anthony Joshua on his, speed dating tour. This is, me, I'm AJ, I'm still the man. If I can't win fights in America. Damn, I'm going to win over hearts by seeing all your favorite fighting trainers and pick one. But if he's actually still having conversations and he's serious and he wants to do it, he needs to make a decision and, make it public and, really invest. And if he does it, I think there'd be a lot of benefits from it. Eddie Reynoso is definitely, I think, taking people to the next level. And it's from the standpoint of improving their defensive prowess within the ring too. And, he would get great sparring. And if Eddie Reynoso would be up for it, I think it'd be a benefit for AJ in a rematch where he's going to be up against it, but he has a possibility, with the right strategy. But it's not something you want to bullshit, man. This is serious business. So if this is just a publicity stunt, then good job. But if he's really trying to make this be a decision that's going to impact his career and legacy, let's not just forget, he's all about, he talks a good game and everything, but if he's truly about his legacy and being a boxer and being the man, then he needs to make a decision one way or the other. Fairness to him, his fans, McCracken, and whoever he decides on. And if he goes by Eddie Reynoso, I think that'd be a good move if he's serious about it. It is not just a publicity stunt.
Man, I totally agree with all of that. The one thing I'd like to say is that, I'm not sure if Joshua and Reynoso could communicate well with each other. Like there might be a language gap, although, sometimes Europeans can easily pick up a second or third language. I've seen it. So, and I do think that Joshua is a fairly smart guy. So, I mean, if he was able to pick up some language, some of the Spanish language, like I think that would help him immensely. Like otherwise, I mean, I think the communication gap might be a little too much. I have seen, you could see this with like when famous trainers, train Eastern Europeans, you could see trainers do a good job of really trying to communicate. I think Joel Diaz did a really good job a couple weeks ago, you know what I mean? Kind of like speaking with his hands and, like trying to like hammer a point home. But sometimes I think it doesn't work out too well. Like I don't really like when Roach does it. To me, I think like, he gets situated, can barely get off a few words. And, by the time the translation happens, like the guy's already back up, ready to fight. And that's not his fault, but I don't know, it's up to Joshua ultimately. Like he doesn't need the star power, so it's purely about the knowledge. He might also want to be in there with some great champions. Like the stable is very impressive in the Reynoso camp, especially if they get Virgil Ortiz. I mean, all it does is add to just how great that stable of fighters is, and they can learn from each other as well as from Reynoso. So we'll see what happens there. It's just an interesting move. I'll just continue to watch it, I guess. And Rumpy MC, it looks like you're here, brother. What do you think, man, about this?
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I mean, Joshua and his team are the only ones that know truly what's going to be the best fit for what he wants. And I mean, you just have to trust what their judgment is. I mean, it looked like it was going to be Ronnie Shields. Now it looks like it's going to be Reynoso. In the last few weeks, Eddie Hearn said he's actually not looking for a new trainer. It's just him just hanging out in the United States and seeing the country. So, I mean, but if it looks like it's going to be Reynoso, I mean, good for him. He must have a good bond with him. Feels like he can learn some things. So, I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, who am I to say that a trainer's not going to be a good fit for a boxer when they know what they want or they know what they need? So, it's going to be interesting, like you said, with the translations. Maybe have a good translator in there, I think you'll be fine. Yeah, and if you can polish Joshua's little things that he wants to learn from him, then I'm all for it, because I would still like to see Anthony Joshua and Wilder, and both of them with new trainers could be the new spin on making this fight big again. So it could be good. That could be a good storyline coming in. Second fight with Malik Scott. Now this is Team Reynoso for Joshua. So I'd like to see it.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I'm just going to continue to monitor it, and Joshua's going to do what's best for him.
Yes.
Yeah. One thing I want to add real quick is, I mean, I know, people may forget, but Ryan Garcia, I know he's not active because, his mental health issues, but I mean, he's not a Spanish speaker. I mean, he's English only. So that's something right.
Good to know. Good to know.
Gringos know each other, man. Come on. We got
I'm assuming though Ryan knows a little more Spanish than Joshua.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he does.
Even if he can't speak it, I'm sure he just can understand a little more.
Well, he knows Joshua, he likes. Sorry, go ahead.
I think I know what's coming, but
yeah, but that Ryan knows that he likes Latina girls. That's a fact,
Yeah, and I'm sure Joshua will pick up some stuff just being in the gym every day. So it'll be good. Be cool to see.
Totally. All right, man. Well, let's get to the next subject, which is a excellent championship fight this weekend at welterweight. We got Terence Bud Crawford versus Showtime Sean Porter. So let's do a little bit of a breakdown and a prediction and work our way down. Sean, what do you think about this fight, man?
I'm excited for the fight. The undercard, as 2021 has shown, the worst undercards I've seen in a while, and this one doesn't disappoint. No disrespect to any fighter on the card, but when you go to have to pay for the fight, and I am a poor brother, you want at least a little something, little sugar on your cake. You know what I'm saying? But as far as the main event, excited for it. Terence Crawford, he's going to show that he is a pound for pound champion. Sean Porter, I have a great appreciation for him and respect for what he's done. If you look to the era of what he's done, if it wasn't for him, a lot of fights, nobody was fighting anybody except for him. So respect for him to coming up and stepping up. He's a dog, but I just think that Terence Crawford is just too much. I think he's better at Sean Porter at everything. And I think that, if Terence Crawford boxes, he wins. The only thing I could possibly see is that, and I don't even really see that, is that it becomes a dogfight, and maybe they get some exchanges that Sean Porter could win and eke out some rounds. But I just think that Terence Crawford is just too talented. I got a lot of respect for Sean Porter and what he's done, but I see it being an easy UD by Crawford. Maybe even not knocks him out, but I could see him putting Sean Porter out late with a body shot. So what I believe is going to win is Crawford by UD. What I would like to happen for a win for me from my fanboy hat is I'd like to see Crawford by a split. Just that, Sean Porter has a really good showing, but realistically, I live on the planet Earth with you guys, and I don't see him having enough to do that. So Crawford by UD.
Yeah, I have to agree with the Crawford by decision. Porter's my favorite fighter in boxing, and Crawford is definitely one of my top 3 favorite boxers in boxing right now. But I just think Crawford does too much for him. I think he's better in every aspect. I think Porter, just because he has a pressure style, I feel like some people think he's a puncher, which he's not. And it's just because the way he delivers his punches. And Crawford, even though his opposition has not been the same level, he's shown that he might not look like a puncher, but he can punch because he knows how to deliver his punches properly. So I think it's going to be a very exciting fight. But I see Crawford just catching Porter, putting him down probably once in the fight. And I think finally, like I was touching on earlier, Sean Porter, his greatest strength, like Customato said, is also going to be his greatest weakness. And his greatest strength is his work ethic. And he works. He's always in the gym. He's always in shape. But I think this is finally going to catch up to him. He spars hard. He spars a lot. And I think it's just going to be too much. I think finally his chin's going to go, which you've seen it go a few times. But he's in such good shape that he's able to recuperate. But I think it's going to be the same way. But I think Crawford's going to be put a beating on Sean, unfortunately. I think it's going to be wide. I think it's going to be like 9-3. I don't really see. And those 3, it's still going to be competitive rounds, meaning like that'd be every benefit of the doubt for Sean. But I'd like to see, as a fan, I'd like to see Sean win just because I just like how he works so hard. But at the same time, like after watching I've liked Crawford, obviously, but after watching like the Blood, Sweat, and Tears documentary little series they're doing on Top Rank's YouTube channel, like Crawford, if he would just be out in the limelight more a little, like people would like him because he's funny. He like if they show him in the gym, he works really hard. They show him just like hanging out at his house, watching fights. Definitely a student of the game, and he's definitely and it's cool. Like they see he's been with Bomac since like the beginning. So I just think if he got out in the limelight more, he'd be way more popular than he is. Because right now he's sort of like when you think about movies, like a cult classic, like he's sort of a cult boxing like fighter right now. He's not really that well known, and like I don't know if Porter has a bigger name because he isn't really a big draw even when he's in California. But I don't think, like, even though Crawford's been undisputed, he has a relatively small name for being as good as he is, as talented as he is. But we'll see. In the end, we need to watch the fights that they need to happen, because we could just say it, we could be totally wrong. But I think it's going to be Crawford, wide unanimous decision.
Nice, man. Nopal, what do you think about this fight, brother?
Man, I'm excited to see that pressure that Porter brings, and I want to see how Crawford deals with it. I believe that Porter's probably going to win like the first 3 rounds maybe, because I think I've seen Crawford. He starts off kind of, he wants to kind of get a feel for the guy, and after that, I think that Crawford's just going to take over. Every round he might even knock him down a round. Get a knockdown, and possibly even it's even a possibility that he might even stop Porter late in it. But I think that this is going to be just a unanimous decision win, 8 rounds to 4, something like that. And I'm excited to see this fight. We get to see Crawford finally get one of these PBC fighters, the good ones, and it's going to be a good fight.
Man, I'm excited about this fight too, and I see it like you guys do. Like, I think it's going to be a wide decision for Crawford, possibly 9-3, and I'm going to give Porter those 3 rounds, that I see in my head, because the one thing about Shawn Porter is he can win rounds in championship fights. I think he's fallen short a lot in his major fights, but he's always game. He's always dog, and I think this is the perfect gauge for us to see how good Crawford is at welterweight. I think Crawford's going to pass this test. I think it's possible that with this performance, we might all universally be saying that Terence Crawford is the number 1 welterweight fighter. Like we have seen in the past where another fighter's inactivity who's ranked at number 1, it just makes him fall. And I'm not saying that Spence is that inactive, but that happened with Keith Thurman. He was ranked number 1. He was undefeated. And all of a sudden he kind of started making his way down the list. Right. And I could see something like that happening, like with Spence just kind of having his issues, whatever they are. I mean, Crawford is a top pound for pound fighter. He's a legitimate defending champion. He's been at welterweight for a long time, and now he's finally knocking at the door of this kind of elite level that never really let him in. And so I'm very excited to see what happens. I can see some knockdowns happening, kind of like the way Marquez would take knockdowns, kind of like, he'd get knocked down but kind of come back up. Like, I don't think it'll be like, oh, this guy's on Queer Street and he's about to get knocked out. And I could also maybe see that both ways. Like, Crawford has been on the floor before. Also, Crawford takes punches to land punches. Well, at least that's what we're told sometimes. Like, I'll be curious to see what happens if Crawford really does want to utilize his defense. Also, I haven't seen Crawford use his leg work since like 140, as far as like just being able to dance. I don't know if he still can at this age, but I mean, they're both in their mid 30s now. So I'll be curious to see how Crawford looks. Like, he's still prime in my opinion, but I don't know if he could utilize that leg work if he needs it. I don't know if he will need it in this fight, but that's something I'm going to keep an eye out, because like I said, this is more about Crawford than it is for Porter, but I also have Crawford by wide unanimous decision.
Do you guys, and that's some great points for sure. Do you guys feel Crawford's going to go in there? I mean, he's hearing all the the whispers, and he's been trying to get these fights. In fact, he actually reached out to WBC to become the mandatory for Spence, and unfortunately was denied for whatever reason. But do you think he'll go out there trying to make a statement, or because I mean he could just box and win comfortably? Or do you think he'll because he has a dog in him, man? Do you think he'll go in there and try to get some exchanges in, just kind of show his arsenal? From that standpoint, so bottom line, do you think it's going to be a statement he's trying to make, or he just wants to win and he'll be happy with just a win?
Man, I'm really hoping that this is a showcase fight for him, man. That he shows like everything, you know what I mean? Like his coming out party at 147, which we know that was back then with Hurd, but I'm hoping that he puts everybody on notice, because I'll be honest, I think that he'll beat Spence easy. That's just my opinion. I know there's a lot of people that see it the other way, and to be honest, I don't know why they see it that way. Crawford has always been a pound for pound guy, So I'm hoping that this is a showcase fight for him.
Yeah, Crawford is one of my favorite fighters. He's been one of my favorite fighters for years and years. I've been watching him for such a long time. Like, I remember when I was excited about the Gamboa fight, to give you guys an idea. Like, that was a long time ago, man. And I was a young man, right? And then Right on the Storm wants to chime in, and he says, how would you guys rank pound for pound if Bud schools Porter? Like, all I could say for myself is I've always had Crawford top 3 easy. To me, he's probably number 2. But he could use better competition. Like, this is his first step up at welterweight, and his resume is, through no fault of his own, it's kind of thin compared to some other fighters, and he is getting older. So I want to see those names on there, and this is where it starts. And so I'm excited for him. To answer your question, Sean, like I think that Porter is also going to bring it, and that's good, because Crawford isn't the type to just go ahead and blitz somebody. Like, he likes the ebb and flow, right? So I think it's just going to ultimately make for a very exciting fight in general right away. But I think it'd be foolhardy for him just to just try to go toe to toe with Sean Porter. And I don't really think that's his style so much. I mean, he's not scared to bang, and he likes for it to get ugly, but he kind of likes it in the later rounds. Like, it doesn't seem to benefit him early when they just start exchanging. Like, you could see that like in the Gamboa fight, the Mean Machine fight. He likes to get warmed up and then go in. Like, this isn't some Porter, or not sure. This isn't some Kell Brook or Amir Khan. You know what I mean? Like, this Porter is solid.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, it's one thing to get that dog and forget the boxing. I'm gonna show this guy who's boss, which he is Crawford. He's the man. He got the skills, but Porter's he's been a champion. He's beat champions. He's worn, tested, and he knows what he's doing in there. So if it can turn into a dogfight, man, I might lose my mind. Like, if this, oh my God, I can't even imagine. Well, I can't imagine. That's why I'm getting excited.
I think the way you have to beat Porter is you do have to exchange with him, because he's going to force the exchange either way. So I'm not saying, like, I agree with you guys. Like, you're not going to go out seeking it, but you're not. The worst thing to do, which is going to get you tired, is just keep moving. Like, Kell Brook just fought the fight of his life against Porter, and he was able to hold a lot in that fight. So that's how he beat Porter. But Porter still landed on him quite a bit. So, but I think Kell Brook won that one. I thought it was a clear victory, but I think the way Crawford at one point is going to be forced, I think it's going to be early, to exchange with him. And if for some reason Sean can walk through his punches, which I don't think it's going to be able to the whole fight, then it might be a long night. Like, I think I still pick Porter is going to, I still pick Crawford to beat Porter easily. But, like, I remember when Sean came off of the Thurman fight, and he took some hellacious shots in the Thurman fight and was just walking through them. If Crawford would have moved up then, opposed to like a few years later against Horn, I think Porter would have broken Crawford down at that point. I think Porter would have broken him down, because Porter, he's become a better boxer, but I think at some point, or at some things, he loses his like ferocity he had in the past, which might be him knowing that he can't do that anymore. Because when he got dropped by Spence, that was like his lights were out. Like, they went out, and then he's in such good shape that it came back. But it wasn't like it was a flash knockdown. It looked like a flash knockdown because he got up so quickly and he's such good shape, he recuperated, but he was out. So I don't know. I'm excited for it either way. I still pick Crawford by wide victory, though, at this point in their careers.
All right, man. Anybody got anything else before we move on to our controversial rescore segment? All right, looks like we're ready to go. Well, the fellows were able to oblige me, and so we're going to get into a fight that I requested, one that I remember being kind of controversial, and Run PMC is going to break it down for us and tell us what was going on at the time. Run PMC, please take it away.
Awesome. Well, as you see, we're reviewing Miguel Cotto versus Sugar Shane Mosley, and it was dubbed Fast and the Furious. I didn't check the release dates on those movies, but I'm sure they were on Fast and the Furious like 3 at that time or something like that. Now they're up to like 11. But yeah, this fight took place November 10th, 2007 at the Madison Square Garden. Funny enough, they said this was Shane Mosley's actually first time fighting, headlining at Madison Square Garden, or maybe fighting at all. He'd always been in the small room, but this was at the full Garden. It was broadcast on HBO pay-per-view, and this was for Miguel's Cotto's 147 welterweight WBA world title belt. Shane Mosley was 36 at the time. Miguel Cotto only 27, and he still had hair, so he was young. In the corners, funny that I didn't know, because I thought he'd already switched over to Brother Nazim at this time, rest in peace. But Jack Mosley was actually in Sugar Shane's corner, and also Cutman Cassius Green. Many people know him because he has a sailor hat that he wears, famous Cutman. And then Miguel Cotto's uncle, Evangelista Cotto, was in Cotto's corner, and Miguel Diaz. Referee was Benji Estevez Jr., a classic, just New York State Athletic Commission referee. And the way it seems like they were billing this fight, at least in the articles I read, were sort of like this was Miguel Cotto's like first really big fight of like a really well-known future Hall of Famer. And it was like, will he rise to superstardom or be defeated by someone that's sort of on the back half of their career, which in the articles they didn't say it, but it's sort of like they were trying to say like Shane was like at this time like a high-level gatekeeper in a way from the articles I read. which I didn't really view it like that at the time. I sort of viewed Shane as being like still like, oh, it's still Sugar Shane. But when you look back at his record, Shane was sort of on the back half of his career already at this time. Like, as we know, Shane is probably one of the most explosive lightweights we might have ever seen, like with the power. But as we see in the fight, his style was he was just winging punches at this time. Granted, they were very strong, and he is very athletic. But like as Emmanuel Stewart likes to say, he sort of is like that jingly jangly jab that he sort of threw out there, and would just be loading up on the wide punches. I mean, it was effective to a point, but Shane was also getting up there in age, like 36 versus 27. That's a pretty big age gap, especially for these aren't like the big weight classes. So there are more wear and tear on the smaller guys, and you do reach your peak earlier. But nevertheless, it was a great fight. Talking about like guys in and around the weight class. This took place in, like I said, October or November 2007. So the money man at that point, Floyd Mayweather, just coming off his win over Oscar De La Hoya. He already had the fight on the books to fight Ricky Hatton later that month in Las Vegas, and then also another guy that Miguel Cotto would end up fighting. Antonio Margarito was actually faced Golden Johnson on the undercard, and I actually watched that because I watched the full broadcast, and Margarito destroyed him very easily. And this is Margarito's comeback fight against the Paul Williams fight, which he was defeated a little bit earlier, and then sort of the context around where both of these guys are coming from. Miguel Cotto, like I said, coming off a very successful run at 140, which the run of guys he beat, here just to name a few, Randall Bailey, DeMarcus Chop Chop Corley, an undefeated Ricardo Torres, and then the hard-hitting Paulie Malignaggi. And then Shane, sort of, like I said, back half of his career, but still a live dog. He had obviously had his losses to Vernon Forrest, rest in peace, Winky Wright, and then sort of he was coming off the he just testified in the Balco grand jury only 4 years before, and then he admitted his use of performance-enhancing drugs only months before this fight, which is interesting now because it's made a big deal now, but I feel like in the build-up it didn't really mention it as much as I expected. So, anyways, Cotto, once he moved up to 147, he's coming off wins of Carlos Quintana, OK Orcal, and then Zab Judah, and then he won the vacant belt. It was actually Ricky Hatton's belt that he won controversially. That was a controversial fight over Luis Collazo, but Ricky Hatton vacated and had the Floyd fight. So I think it was a very good fight. I'll probably have it a little bit differently than you all. The Letterman card had it 115, 113 in favor of Miguel Cotto, but I'd love to hear what you guys think, and then I could give mine because I think mine's a little bit different.
All right. Well, I would love to go first, and I want to thank all you guys for taking the time to go back in time with me and rescore this fight. Like I said, man, I suggested this one because back in the day when I was getting into boxing, I was looking forward to Miguel Cotto fighting Margarito, and so I started going back and watching all of his fights, and I remember being really high on Cotto, and then I ended up watching this fight and thinking, oh, there was something there where I thought, well, I thought Mosley won it at the time when I scored it, but I haven't seen it in such a long time, so I wanted to revisit it. Also, every once in a while, I would hear people go, well, I had Mosley winning, but, I also noticed that nobody really talked about this controversial fight. I mean, like Run PMC said, this is such a rich time for boxing. I mean, so many, you could just hear the telecast and hear all the shit that's going on. Like, man, I would love for this type of action to be going on again. So, I mean, this was a really good fight. Yeah, Mosley's still formidable, man. So, I watched the fight and I had it scored. To my surprise, I had it 8-4 for Miguel Cotto. I thought that this was a controversial fight, but when I went back and watched it, I'm not sure if it's because my scoring's evolved, but I thought Cotto did really good work early. And, and this shows why it's important to try to win the early rounds. And when fighters just kind of give up those early rounds, like they better have some confidence that they're going to come on strong towards the end, because every round counts. Like even if you're coming on strong at the end, like if you don't have enough rounds in the bank, you're going to lose, and this was a close fight. Don't get me wrong. Like there was a lot of great ebb and flow in general. I did have some swing rounds. I thought round 3 was a swing round, but I gave it to Mosley. Round 7, I gave to Mosley, but I thought that was a swing round. Round 8, I thought was a swing round, gave to Mosley. And then round 12, I gave to Mosley, but easily could have gone to Cotto. So even if I gave all the swing rounds to Mosley, I would still have it a draw. So I think Cotto did win this fight. And a couple of things that I wanted to just talk about was that you could make an argument that this was Cotto's peak. Like, it was interesting to hear the telecast and their idea of presenting Cotto as this come forward, apex predator, aggressive style guy. Like, after the Margarito fight, unfortunately, like, we never really heard of Cotto being dictated like that again, and he ended up changing his style to adapt towards higher weight classes, more power, and possibly having taken the damage from some really just hard fights. But this was a time where Miguel Cotto was just the man. Also, I wanted to say that, Cotto was really good at owning the real estate for most of this ring, which I was surprised about. Like, I've always thought of Mosley as like a very physically strong welterweight, but Cotto was doing a good job of, using physical strength and also punching power to own the real estate of the ring. And that's not something that I remembered. And so, even when I was watching the fight, I remember going like, oh shit, did I actually have this fight close? Because I thought Cotto did very good work early. Although I did remember, okay, well, the tide's going to turn, but, to me, the tide turned a little bit too late. Also, I wanted to say that, round 7, in my opinion, although it was a close round, like, I think that shows, I ended up giving round 7 to Mosley, but I think that shows how you win a round going backwards. I thought it was close, but he stayed in the pocket and won the round. And I think that Cotto earned the rounds, and then also Cotto was also able to show us late how you can win a fight going backwards. So I was really impressed with the skill level of this fight. And so I have some other comments, but I want to save them. So I had it Cotto beating Mosley 8-4. Sean, what did you think about this fight?
Oh man, I love your points, and I did enjoy watching the fight. And I actually reached out to you guys and asked if I could, well, not ask, but is it cool within the exercise to watch it multiple times? Because what happened, I forgot how great a fight it was, and I just forgot to score it the first time. I was just watching it like, man, this is a fucking badass fight. And then I was like, oh shit, so then I went back and I watched it a maximum of 3 times, because after that, you kind of defeat the purpose of the exercise. Because I find at least, I become over analytic on rounds. And that's like, I kind of think takes away the whole essence of scoring, of the rescore. So yeah, I'm not stalling, but I definitely have a different scorecard than you. All right. So going into the fight, I felt that I was thinking that, yeah, Mosley was going to have the better jab, but he kind of had like a little flick jab, like they were saying. And, Cotto had a great jab. He was utilizing his left hook, landing brutal shots. I mean, it was brutal inside fighting. He was definitely the bigger, stronger fighter. And I think he established that throughout several of the rounds. But I forgot where I made a note there as far as like a switch happened. Yeah, so I know like in the 7th round, there was like 2 times where there was an adjustment made by Cotto. He had switched over to the southpaw, which he was able to make adjustments and really kind of diffuse that right hand that Mosley kept landing. I mean, he was landing like some real, powerful, clean shots on Cotto. But he was being out physical too. So it was a good epic flow of the fight. So how I scored it, I gave the first round, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, 10th round, 11th round to Cotto. And I gave the 2nd round, 3rd round, 7th round, 8th round, 9th round, 12th round to Mosley. So I think it's also maybe my preference as a fight scorer, because I was looking at as far as not just the damage, but the amount of shots that were thrown, and but making sure they were still effective. Because yeah, Cotto definitely landed the more effective shots, but sometimes it would be like I felt Mosley was winning the round or had the advantage in the round. I forget which one specifically. Maybe I'm thinking of 10, but then he would land like a big left, or a big shot. And I know he made some adjustments like in the 7th round that I'm speaking for. So I actually had it to draw, because I think some of the swing rounds, I found myself leaning more towards Mosley for the activity. And I did feel like he was fighting pretty good off his back foot. And I don't know when, I think it was like after the 6th round where Cotto had got hurt. Like it said something about he had an injury in his mouth from a previous fight. And it definitely affected him. Like he became passive. I won't say passive, but like less aggressive.
Yeah, something happened.
Yeah, something happened. It was weird, Like, so during that time, I got to be honest, man, I gave Mosley all those rounds. And that's when it really changed for me. And, and it's like Mosley sensed it. Then also, too, I think the ultimate thing that kind of switched it over is that last round, man, like I thought Cotto had the momentum, man. I gave him 10 and 11, and I was like, oh man, he's got this, because he had just landed that big left, that massive left to kind of set things off. But then I don't know, he kind of got on his bike that last round, and just from the amount of shots that were landed, and there was at least enough effective shots that were landed by Mosley. I gave him that last final 12th round, and it made it a draw, which pissed me off. Because I'm like, what is Cotto doing? I
Right.
hate draws, man. I hate draws. I wear draws. I don't score them, but here we go. So
All right. So, but not a robbery in your opinion.
no, not at all. Not a robbery at all. I mean, it was a good, entertaining fight, and I could definitely see why people would say that Cotto won. But I could also, I question his aggression towards the end of the fight, but he made a big comeback. Like, for him to, whatever injury he had, whether his mouth or his hand or whatever, he made an adjustment. He dug deep, because I really thought at that point, we talk about the epic low and shift, you could easily see where, how he was really having mental, stress at that point during the fight. So hats off to both fighters, man. Loved it. And also shout out too to Jack Mosley. Have you ever heard a guy more calm that doesn't know the rounds? Man,
Hey, you know what?
he
I
was like,
love this corner work, man. Like, and I like the other side too. The corner work was great. That's what I love going. Like, what I love about going back and hearing these old fights, man. You get to hear a little bit more of it. Run PMC, dude. What'd you think about this fight, and how did you score it?
I thought it was a great fight. I mean, it was good to see these guys that future Hall of Famers, or I don't know if they are actual Hall of Famers yet, but yeah, Hall of Famers or future Hall of Famers get in there and duke it out. I didn't score this obviously when I watched it in 2007, but I definitely thought it was a close fight back then. I thought Cotto won, and I think Cotto won this one as well. I had it actually 9-3 in favor of Miguel Cotto, with rounds 2, 3, and 5 close, which I all gave to Miguel Cotto. I just think that Cotto was just owning the ring. He was the ring general for the most part. He was landing the most punches, and I think I don't know the punch stats, but I think that I don't know if the judges did it, but I found myself sometimes like giving Mosley the benefit of the doubt in some rounds, um, because in all honesty, like Shane for some of the rounds, it just seemed like he was winging punches and land one shot. But it's like the way I judge fights, you can't just land one shot unless you're knocking down someone or really staggering someone to win a round. Obviously, I didn't take notes for each of these uh, each of these rounds, and I only watched this once. And like I said when we were talking earlier, when I score a round, especially when you're watching off TV, I just score it right when the bell right when it's over, before they get to the corner, because I don't want to be influenced by any further commentary or further replays or anything they say in the corner or anything like that, or the unofficial score. So that's just how I had it. It might be a little wide. Like I said, I had close rounds in 2, 3, and 5 that all went to Cotto. But even if you were to make those even rounds, it would still be like a 117, 114 for Miguel Cotto. What I did find interesting though is Miguel Cotto getting absolutely broken down in the 9th round by Shane Mosley. Like it could have been the cut in the mouth, but he was taking punches like crazy, and that sort of lines up with when Miguel Cotto does sort of break down, which was against Margarito. So it was sort of in that 8th, 9th round, that time frame, he starts losing gas, and then he starts getting hit a lot. And then it was also in the second, excuse me, in the second Margarito fight, the fight was stopped in the 9th round, but it was because the referee was fearing for Margarito's eye. So
Right.
Miguel Cotto was consistent about when in the fight that he would lose, or he would lose steam. But I mean, I had a little wide, but I don't think it was. I thought it was a clear cut victory for Miguel Cotto. Um, the judges had it 116, 113, and then 2 for 115, 113. So that's 8-4, and then 8-4, that one with one even on that 116, 113, and then 7-5 on both. But so not too far off from that, with just 2 rounds difference. But I think, in my opinion, I just think Miguel Cotto just won it clear. Shane, it was a good showing, but I think um, as you saw just later in his career, that he still had the power, but the style was more suited for the lower weight classes because he had his power and his speed. But here, still a great fighter, but wasn't really, after this fight, like he wasn't really what he was before. Like after this fight, he fought Mayorga, and then he had his rebound fight against Margarito. But after that, it was just Floyd, and then he fought, like, I think he fought Sergio Mora, and then it was the Pacquiao, and then by the time he got to Canelo and like those later fights, he was done. So this was like the end of where Shane would be, where has the skills, because I think his name carried him longer than maybe the skills were actually there. And then, but even all that said, great fight though. I'm glad we rescored it.
Right. Yeah. The Margarito fight definitely helped Mosley. He kind of was able to
Yes.
get quite a few paychecks after that. So hey, all right. So I have a clear win for Cotto. So does Run PMC. Gringo saw the draw, and so we're going to Nopal. Nopal, tell us, how'd you see it, man?
Okay, so I see the fight. Round one wasn't a clear round, but I thought Cotto had a little more momentum right there. So I gave the first round to Cotto. And then after that, I give rounds 2, 9, and 10 to Mosley. So I scored the fight eight rounds to 4. And yeah, like everybody was saying, I think it was in the ninth round when Mosley, I gave him the round because he really hurt Cotto. But as far that's the whole reason why I give him the round. I don't say he did better work the whole round, but towards the end he hurt Cotto, and then in the 10th round he had a little more momentum, so I gave him that round too. And it's interesting to see Mosley. He had, I think he was coming off of, like, he had, at that point in his career, he had already lost to 2 guys, and then we also know that he had the scandal with Balco where he admitted to being on something. I think, when you sit back and look at his career, you can see that he put mostly everything he had into both those Oscar De La Hoya fights, which he won both, and then around this time, he was purely just living off of, being a prize fighter, basically. And, when you look at the punch stats for this fight, interesting enough, the round that I ended up giving, a lot of us say bad stuff about punch stat, but it is a tool that you can occasionally use, and so interestingly enough, the rounds I gave Mosley, he actually went on the punch stats. He did better than Cotto, and I wanted to say also that if you look at the punch stats, they both equally landed the same amount of punches, but it was at a different percentage. The percentage went to Cotto, and yeah, I mean these rounds were closer, but at the same time, it was easily to see that Cotto won the fight, and it was a great fight to go back and watch.
Nice, man. Thank you guys so much for obliging me. And I helped set the record straight for myself. And I just wanted to talk a little bit more about this fight regarding round 9, the change. Yes, Mosley did win the round, but Cotto was also able to show off that great footwork. Like he had like a tool that he didn't have to use until he decided to, and all of a sudden that guy could dance. And when I was talking about, like, I'd love to see if Crawford could still dance, that's what I meant. Like, to be able to kind of like go back and forth, move laterally while still boxing and not necessarily running. I haven't seen Crawford do that in a long time, but I know he can, and I want to know if he still can. But Cotto, just really versatile boxer. Like he really was a complete boxer in a lot of ways. Like I said earlier, I thought this was peak Cotto. And Mosley, very serviceable even at 35 in this fight. Like he's got such an interesting, awkward style. Like I don't want to say like I don't enjoy watching him fight, but it's just I can't get into his rhythm. It's such a weird, like, I don't know if it's like herky jerky or maybe he's trying to offset, his opponent's timing, but it's just such a weird style, and I think he made a good of account of himself though, for sure.
Yes, he's stiff in there. That's what it is. It looks like he's just very stiff, and like he was smoother when he like won the title off Holiday back when, but it was just always was like that. It seemed like he was like tight in the shoulders or something, but the power at the lightweight is what got him through. He would just be knocking guys out like crazy, and it was good because Cotto, in his later career, he sort of did that little skip thing he does. Like that
Oh yeah.
little, yeah, he was doing it alone this fight, but he did have more of like, it seemed like he was more gliding around the ring than doing that little like skipping thing that he gets up on his feet. It looks like sort of like jumping rope and then like would dart in and out that he sort of used like in the Pacquiao fight. And then like even when he joined Freddie Roach, he sort of still did that little skip thing, then would dart in.
Oh yeah, another thing I wanted to mention too, like on top of everything, is you see a little bit of everything in this like fight. On top of like the ebb and flow and the back and forth and winning rounds going backwards, we also saw toe to toe. We saw great inside fighting, and then we also saw when they both decided to box. So there was a lot of things going on in this fight. So even though sometimes I think rounds were clear, like these two were like formidable adversaries for each other. I mean, and a great step up fight. Like this is what a 27-year-old welterweight champion should be doing, who's trying to rise in the ranks. Like 27 is a great age at welterweight to be making big moves. And I wish we had solid gatekeepers like Mosley. I would take a 35 Mosley in this division like right now and think that the welterweight division would be better for it.
I second that. I totally agree.
Solid fight. So before we wrap this thing up, does anybody have any final thoughts on this clean win by Miguel Cotto?
Yeah, one thing that I'll say is that I definitely enjoyed the fight, and a part of it that made it so enjoyable. I kind of dismiss and kind of give people a hard time, like, man, you're being too over dramatic. Like, it doesn't matter about the commentary. Emmanuel Stewart on there was like magic, man, and like just kind of that HBO just knew how to show and put great presentations on for fights, and maybe that's part of the nostalgia for me. And the memories are, also kind of raising it up. But comparing to what we have now, man, I really missed the presentation they put on for the fight. So it like really helped elevate it even more and made me appreciate just the event as a whole. They just knew what they were doing. So I missed that. And Mr. Emmanuel Stewart, man, what a boxing mind. Like the way he broke down rounds was awesome.
Yep, I love hearing what he has to say. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to that great crowd, a hot Puerto Rican crowd. They were ready to embrace Miguel Cotto, as the torchbearer. And I've always said that, Puerto Rican boxing, that's a pillar stone of the sport that's been missing for a while, man. So it was nice to see an era where, there was like a champion that they could rally behind, and boxing was just hotter in general back then. I mean, this was Madison Square Garden. So, I mean, very impressive as far as like what he was doing at the time and how he embraced that fan base, even though he wasn't necessarily like the smiling Tito. They loved him and they also respected him. So thank you all so much for bearing with me. So, Sean, we got to give it back to you, man, for our next rescore. The last time you suggested a killer fight, but we always have to make sure G-Funky's available. So I want you to name this next one anything you want, right, except for a Canelo fight, and then maybe also not the since we're on the topic of Mosley, maybe also not the Mosley De La Hoya 2, because I hate that fight, even though some people think De La Hoya won. Like they touch it up too much. To me, it's like I think their best fight was their first fight. So I just need more time before I see that one. But besides that, man, it's a blank check, baby. What do you think?
Oh, wow. Man, that is tough. All right, so trying to think of something that, would definitely get people excited. So no Canelo fights, no De La Hoya the second fight. Damn.
Well, I mean, just while your mind's cooking, we could make some suggestions too, man. Like we've never scored like a Pacquiao Marquez fight. Some people talk about the Morales Barrera fights. I mean, we could go anywhere really. I mean, there's still a slew of controversial fights, and also if Run or Nopal have any suggestions, man, we could throw them out too.
Well, yeah. If you guys don't mind, if we can partake, I would like. I like Pacquiao Marquez 3.
Ooh.
Or do we have to? Will G-Funky be available? I know he wants to do that one too, though.
Does he? I mean, I know he feels very strongly about that third fight, but I have my own thoughts too, man, and he's always welcome. But hey, the only rule for us, waiting for G-Funky is Canelo fights. So hey, man, let's do this one. Let's lock it in, and it's official. We're gonna do Manny Pacquiao versus Marquez 3. Great fight. I haven't watched it in a while, but I mean, I do remember people thinking, well, hey, man, that was the one. That was the one that Marquez won. And if I remember right, he didn't get knocked down in that one. So, hell, it's official. I'm looking forward to going back and watching that one.
Thank you, guys. And thanks to everybody that tuned in. Much love, much appreciation, man. Love doing these. And you guys are great, man. These are awesome shows.
Yes, indeed. For the guys at El Chile, thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.